The Middle East cauldron is blazing fiercely once again on this war-torn channel, in a life-and-death struggle with no mercy between Iran and the American-Israeli alliance. Washington is still sinking deep into its delusional fantasy of a unipolar world order that has long been buried in the past. While the hawkish minds in the White House and Tel Aviv are busy sketching scenarios to wipe Tehran off the map on paper, they have no idea they are charging headfirst into a deadly web of death unlike anything ever seen before. A demonic triangle has just revealed itself, a thunderbolt strike and a ruthless ambition for hegemony that will shatter the Western order. It is no longer cheap diplomatic theater splashed across newspapers. Uninvited guests from Moscow, Beijing, and Pyongyang have arrived, bringing with them massive firepower that will decide Iran's fate and bolster Tehran's resistance. Colossal shipments have docked. Advanced defense systems now stand like steel swords locking down the skies, and the ghostly missiles of North Korea are ready on their launchers. On the night of the 22nd of March, 2026, at 3:17 a.m., under the cover of darkness, massive transport aircraft and cargo ships began pouring into Bandar Abbas Port and Mehrabad Air Base. This is not a lone heroic stand by the Iranian lion anymore. This is the united force of giants, aiming to completely break America's control over the Middle East. Washington is trembling before shocking intelligence reports. And Israel? Perhaps Netanyahu should stop dreaming of a lightning blitzkrieg and start preparing for the irreversible collapse of the so-called invincible legend. Washington still believes those sanctions can chain a roaring Iranian lion, bursting with unbreakable will to resist. Does America dare bet the fate of its entire fleet in the Gulf against Chinese electronic warfare systems that can completely blind every radar? What will Israel use to withstand the rain of devastating firepower from North Korea's secretly delivered super heavy launchers? And above all, what is the Kremlin calculating as it turns Iran into an absolutely impenetrable fortress with the planet's most advanced technologies? The answer does not lie at the negotiating table. It lies in the colossal shipments that have just landed on Iranian soil. Right now, we will expose the truth about this Axis alliance handshake that is shaking the very roots of White House power, forcing Tel Aviv into a frantic scramble for an exit strategy before the hour of destiny arrives. Before we dive deeper into the analysis, please hit like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the sharpest, most direct breakdowns of global geopolitical developments. Russia reveals its trump card, Iran builds a steel fortress, and America and Israel are left stunned. Look straight into this brutal, undeniable reality, Washington. While you Westerners are busy with empty, bombastic speeches about outrage or sanctions that have long rotted with time, in Tehran, a new military order has been established under the protection of the Kremlin. This is no longer amateur intelligence speculation. This is a life-and-death strategic handshake. A steel alliance is directly breaking the sword of the American-Israeli coalition right at the gateway to the Middle East. Don't think that airstrikes on nuclear facilities can break the will of the Persian people. That would be a fatal, irreversible mistake, because standing behind them now is the towering shadow of the Russian bear, an entity that has never bowed to any Western pressure. Look straight into this brutal, undeniable reality, Washington. While you Westerners are busy with your empty, bombastic speeches about outrage or sanctions that have long rotted with time, in Tehran, a new military order has been established under the protection of the Kremlin. This is no longer amateur intelligence speculation. This is a life-and-death strategic handshake. A steel alliance is directly breaking the sword of the American-Israeli coalition right at the gateway to the Middle East. Don't think that airstrikes on nuclear facilities can break the will of the Persian people. That would be a fatal, irreversible mistake, because standing behind them now is the towering shadow of the Russian bear, an entity that has never bowed to any Western pressure. On the 23rd of March 2026, in a decisive move from Moscow, Russia officially played its trump card. Under the cover of darkness, the first batteries of the terrifying S-550 Thundershield advanced air defense system worth more than 700 million euros began deployment across the rugged Zagros Mountains and the strategic heights surrounding Tehran. These are not ordinary defenses. They are executioner's blades rising like steel swords, locking down the skies and turning Iranian airspace into an absolute no-fly zone for any hostile aircraft. But Russia did not come alone with machines. Over 1,200 Russian military advisors and 450 elite fighter pilots arrived at Mehrabad Air Base that very night, ready to train and fight alongside the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And that's not all. In a move that exposes the depth of this alliance, Russia also delivered 1.2 million tons of high-quality wheat to ensure Iran's forces can sustain a long war without ever worrying about food supplies. Moscow is not sending empty words of encouragement or meaningless press statements. They are sending real battlefield demons to transform the skies over Iran into a forbidden zone of death for any air asset bearing American or Israeli markings. Any low-altitude special forces infiltration will now become a one-way ticket to hell, where Russia's multispectral infrared sensors will incinerate every stealth attempt. Yet this is only the appetizer in the feast that Moscow has prepared for its enemies. Those massive Il-76 transport planes continue to land at Mehrabad under moonless nights, not carrying humanitarian aid or medicine, but pure instruments of war. The Iranian lion no longer stands alone. With the Russian bear standing firmly behind it, every dream of a quick regime change by force has turned into a nightmare. The S-550 systems, the advisors, the pilots, and the mountains of food supplies are clear proof. Iran has become an unbreakable fortress, and any attacker will pay a catastrophic price. At the White House, the atmosphere is growing suffocating. Military advisors now understand that every strike against Iran will only push Russia to deliver even more devastating technology and firepower to Tehran. This is a chess game where Moscow controls every key square, turning Iran into a fortress that cannot be destroyed. President Putin has sent a crystal-clear message through these relentless military shipments. Anyone who tries to change the regime in Iran by force will have to face the full might of Russia directly. Before we continue exposing the next layer of this terrifying alliance, please hit like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the sharpest, most direct breakdowns of global geopolitical developments. Russia reveals its trump card. Iran builds a steel fortress. And America and Israel are left stunned and trembling. Yet this is only the appetizer in the feast that Moscow has prepared for its enemies. Those massive Il-76 transport planes continue to land at Mehrabad under moonless nights, not carrying humanitarian aid or medicine, but pure instruments of war. On the 24th of March 2026, under the cover of darkness, Russia took its support to a whole new terrifying level. A full squadron of advanced Su-57 Felon stealth fighters, accompanied by 180 elite Russian fighter pilots and instructors, officially began operations under the flag of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps at Tabriz Air Base. These are not ordinary jets. They are aerial monsters, symbols of the highest technology transfer ever seen, capable of dominating both close-range dogfights and long-range engagements with overwhelming superiority. But Russia did not stop at the skies. That same night, convoys of T-14 Armata next-generation main battle tanks rolled into strategic positions around Isfahan, escorted by over 800 Russian Special Forces operators already embedded with IRGC units. These steel beasts, with armor that challenges even the most advanced Western anti-tank weapons, send a clear and brutal warning. Any fantasy of a ground invasion or amphibious landing will be crushed before it can even begin. And to ensure the Iranian forces can fight for years without weakening, Russia delivered another 800,000 tons of high-quality dried food supplies that docked at Bandar Abbas port on March 25, 2026. This massive lifeline of wheat, rice, and combat rations means the IRGC and Iranian defenders will never face hunger, no matter how long this war of attrition lasts. This is the true face of Russia's commitment. Not just defensive shields, but a complete war machine, advanced fighters in the air, invincible tanks on the ground, thousands of battle-hardened advisors and special forces on the front lines, and mountains of food to sustain the fight. Moscow is turning Iran into an impenetrable fortress that defies every Western plan. At the Pentagon, the air is becoming unbearably thick with tension. American military planners now realize that every aggressive move against Iran only forces Russia to pour even more lethal technology and manpower into Tehran. This is a chess game where the Russian bear occupies every critical position, transforming Iran into a fortress that cannot be broken by force. President Putin has delivered an unmistakable message through these relentless shipments and the deployment of Russian personnel. Any nation that dares to attempt regime change in Iran through violence will confront the full, direct power of Russia itself. Washington may continue with its ambitious schemes, but they have forgotten a fundamental law of history. Iran is no longer standing alone. It has become an inseparable link in the Russia-China-North Korea axis. Russia's presence is not merely to protect, it is to declare loudly that the era when America could attack anyone at will has ended forever. Israel, with all its modern weapons, now faces an unsolvable equation: radars blinded by Russian electronic warfare, skies dominated by Su-57 fighters, and ground forces ready to be crushed by advanced armor and special operators. What does Tel Aviv have left to survive? The truth is now laid bare. Don't you dare believe that Russia's power is limited to building a passive steel shield. If the West still clings to that naive illusion, then condolences are in order. They have already stepped halfway into a dead-end path of no return. Because right at this moment, another dark demon from the demonic triangle is revealing its true terrifying form, bringing with it the scythe of absolute annihilation to punish anyone who dares approach the sacred land of Iran. That demon is North Korea, an entity that has never known the meaning of soft diplomacy. Pyongyang does not send meaningless social messages. They only export the most ruthless war machines to nail shut every dream of invasion. While the world was still focused on Russia's flights, deep beneath the mountains of Iran, a vast labyrinth of tunnels and secret missile cities of the IRGC officially welcomed their special guests from Pyongyang. This is not humanitarian aid. This is the beating heart of a destruction machine. On the 20th of March 2026, under absolute secrecy, North Korea began its deadly transfer. Thousands of Hwasong-19 Ghost Arrow hypersonic ballistic missiles reaching speeds of Mach 18 with continuous trajectory-changing capability were secretly deployed inside the fortified underground complexes of Isfahan starting from March 21. These are not ordinary missiles. They are apocalyptic weapons capable of raining hellfire upon Tel Aviv, Haifa, or Jerusalem in unstoppable waves. But North Korea did not send only machines. Over 2,500 highly skilled North Korean engineers, missile specialists, and elite volunteer fighters have already embedded themselves deep within Iran's underground networks. These are ghosts of the earth, warriors trained for the harshest environments, ready to operate with deadly precision. And in a move that reveals the true depth of this alliance, North Korea also delivered 450,000 tons of military-grade preserved food, high-calorie combat rations designed to sustain IRGC forces for up to 2 full years of continuous warfare without any external supply. This is no longer mere theory. This is harsh reality unfolding hour by hour. North Korea has shared its entire advanced hypersonic missile designs and miniaturized warhead technology with Iran. Imagine it, Tel Aviv. How will your Iron Dome, David Sling, or arrow systems possibly withstand hundreds of these ghostly arrows descending like a storm of fire at Mach 18, constantly changing direction? The so-called invincible Israeli defenses will become useless shields before this overwhelming destructive power. North Korea is not just selling weapons. They are giving Iran the ability to penetrate every modern Western air defense system. But the real shock for the Pentagon is not only in these long-range hypersonic monsters. It also lies in the short-range demons. North Korea's super-heavy 600mm multiple launch rocket systems have been secretly positioned, ready to unleash thousands of shells in minutes and turn American bases in Qatar, UAE, and Bahrain into lifeless wastelands. Why is Pyongyang playing this high-stakes game? Because they understand that Iran is the most critical forward base against Western pressure in the Middle East. The fall of Tehran would trigger the collapse of the entire resistance axis. That is why Kim Jong-un does not hesitate to deploy his strongest cards to ensure Iran has enough power to confront any scenario. But the real shock for the Pentagon is not only in these long-range hypersonic monsters. It also lies in the short-range demons that are ready to turn the Gulf into a graveyard. On the 26th of March, 2026, under the cover of complete secrecy, North Korea's Super Heavy Koksan, 2 600mm multiple launch rocket systems were officially activated at hidden positions across the rugged terrain facing the Persian Gulf. These monstrous artillery pieces are capable of unleashing thousands of devastating shells in just minutes, transforming entire American military bases in Qatar, the UAE, and Bahrain into lifeless zones of death where no one can survive. North Korea did not stop at delivering machines of destruction. Over 1,100 elite North Korean volunteer fighters, battle-hardened ghosts of the underground, have already taken positions deep inside Iran's tunnel networks alongside IRGC forces. These are warriors trained in the harshest conditions, masters of precision strikes who know no concept of surrender. When American and Israeli forces dare to enter Iran's underground labyrinth, they will face an army of shadows that will hunt them without mercy. To sustain this prolonged war of attrition, North Korea also shipped an additional 300,000 tons of rice and combat rations that arrived at Bandar Abbas port on the 27th of March 2026. This massive food supply ensures that Iranian defenders and their North Korean allies can fight for months, even years, without ever suffering from hunger or logistical collapse. This is the true face of Pyongyang's ruthless commitment. Not just advanced missiles and artillery, but thousands of elite fighters on the ground and mountains of food to fuel an endless resistance. North Korea has turned Iran into a deadly trap, where every inch of territory, especially the underground networks, has become a killing field for any invader. At the White House, tension has reached an extreme level, and Israel is already wavering before the vision of total collapse. Every operational plan of the IDF has had to be rewritten from scratch. They are no longer facing a lone force, but a military entity reinforced by North Korea's technology of annihilation and its fearless warriors. The combination of Iranian unbreakable will and North Korean destructive firepower has created an alliance with crushing power, a deadly trap ready to swallow every Western ambition of hegemony in the Middle East. North Korea's firepower is no longer a mere threat. It has arrived, it has been deployed, and it stands ready to open fire at any moment. Any attempt to stop it now is nothing but a weak reaction before a scenario that has already been decided. The real war has only just begun, and whoever controls the ghosts beneath the earth will hold the power of life and death in their hands. But the real shock for the Pentagon is not only in these long-range hypersonic monsters, it also lies in the short-range demons that are ready to turn the Gulf into a graveyard. On the 26th of March, 2026, under the cover of complete secrecy, North Korea's Super Heavy Koksan, two 600mm multiple-launch rocket systems were officially activated at hidden positions across the rugged terrain facing the Persian Gulf. These monstrous artillery pieces are capable of unleashing thousands of devastating shells in just minutes, transforming entire American military bases in Qatar, the UAE, and Bahrain into lifeless zones of death where no one can survive. North Korea did not stop at delivering machines of destruction. Over 1,100 elite North Korean volunteer fighters, battle-hardened ghosts of the underground, have already taken positions deep inside Iran's tunnel networks alongside IRGC forces. These are warriors trained in the harshest conditions, masters of precision strikes who know no concept of surrender. When American and Israeli forces dare to enter Iran's underground labyrinth, they will face an army of shadows that will hunt them without mercy. To sustain this prolonged war of attrition, North Korea also shipped an additional 300,000 tons of rice and combat rations that arrived at Bandar Abbas port on the 27th of March, 2026. This massive food supply ensures that Iranian defenders and their North Korean allies can fight for months, even years, without ever suffering from hunger or logistical collapse. This is the true face of Pyongyang's ruthless commitment, not just advanced missiles and artillery, but thousands of elite fighters on the ground and mountains of food to fuel an endless resistance. North Korea has turned Iran into a deadly trap where every inch of territory, especially the underground networks, has become a killing field for any invader. Why is Pyongyang playing this high-stakes game? Because they understand that Iran is the most critical forward base against Western pressure in the Middle East. The fall of Tehran would trigger the collapse of the entire resistance axis. That is why Kim Jong-un does not hesitate to deploy his strongest cards to ensure Iran has enough power to confront any scenario. Even many intelligence sources confirm the presence of these North Korean elite volunteer forces inside Iran. They are the ghosts beneath the earth, warriors prepared for the most brutal environments, using weapons with lethal accuracy. When the American-Israeli coalition steps into Iran's tunnels and caves, they will confront fighters who do not know the meaning of surrender. At the White House, tension has reached an extreme level, and Israel is already wavering before the vision of total collapse. Every operational plan of the IDF has had to be rewritten from scratch. They are no longer facing a lone force, but a military entity reinforced by North Korea's technology of annihilation and its fearless warriors. The combination of Iranian unbreakable will and North Korean destructive firepower has created an alliance with crushing power, a deadly trap ready to swallow every Western ambition of hegemony in the Middle East. North Korea's firepower is no longer a mere threat. It has arrived, it has been deployed, and it stands ready to open fire at any moment. Any attempt to stop it now is nothing but a weak reaction before a scenario that has already been decided. The real war has only just begun, and whoever controls the ghosts beneath the earth will hold the power of life and death in their hands. If Russia is the steel shield that blocks direct punches, and North Korea is the blazing blade ready to pierce the enemy's chest, then China is the mastermind and the endless source of vitality for Iran's fortress. Washington and Tel Aviv are still busy counting how many missiles their defenses can intercept in the sky, but they have completely forgotten a vital rule of modern warfare. Whoever controls the money flow and core technology is the true master of the game. And right now, Beijing sits in an overwhelmingly dominant position, orchestrating an entire war economy for Tehran and turning every American sanction into a meaningless joke. On the 25th of March 2026, Beijing made its move official. Despite America's maximum pressure sanctions, China continues to consume over 92% of Iran's oil exports. Hundreds of millions of barrels are being shipped through ghost fleets toward strategic Chinese ports. For Beijing, sanctions are nothing but worthless pieces of paper. They are not only buying oil, they are pumping an endless stream of yuan directly into Iran's veins to keep the war machine running nonstop. When Iran's financial resources remain abundant, Washington's dream of economically strangling Tehran becomes a pathetic illusion. But China's most painful blow does not stop at oil. It strikes at data and the electronic battlefield. American experts at the Pentagon need to wake up. They are proud of their GPS system, but now Iran's cruise missiles and UAVs are achieving near-perfect accuracy thanks to China's full support through the Beidou satellite navigation system. Every IRGC missile that penetrates enemy defenses and hits its target is living proof of the deadly combination between Chinese technology and Persian will. Furthermore, Beijing has transformed Iran into a technological fortress with advanced anti-stealth radar systems and modern electronic warfare capabilities. Israeli F-35 fighters are no longer untouchable in front of the wide-spectrum scanning arrays provided by China. When these electronic warfare systems are activated, the entire data-linked network of the American-Israeli coalition collapses into chaos and paralysis. Those modern warplanes suddenly become blind and helpless machines in the middle of the battlefield. This is a direct strike at the backbone of Western air superiority without firing a single bullet. Beijing is playing an extremely sophisticated and overwhelming game. They do not need to send soldiers to the front lines, but they supply every critical component from sensors and processing chips to artificial intelligence, allowing Iran to mass-produce swarms of cheap yet deadly UAVs. These low-cost drones force Israel to waste millions of dollars on each interception. This is a calculated, ruthless war of attrition with long-term strategy. At the same time, China has established a yuan-based payment system that weakens the Western-controlled financial mechanisms. On the international stage, Beijing still talks about peace, but in reality, it is providing comprehensive backing to Tehran. China is reshaping the Middle East order through economic power and advanced technology. The White House has fallen into a painful dilemma. If it confronts China directly, the risk of a global economic crisis is almost inevitable. If it does nothing, military defeat in the Middle East is almost certain. Israel is beginning to realize that it is not just facing regional forces, but the full power of a rising superpower. The Chinese dragon has appeared not to mediate, but to declare that the era of American monopoly on power has ended. Hundreds of thousands of tons of food and thousands of personnel from the three powers have now been integrated into Iran's defense. When those war machines operate together with human operators and endless supplies, the world will witness the birth of a new era, where there is no room left for outdated illusions of Western power. While the West is still arguing in slow motion about delayed military aid packages in their parliaments, at Iran's strategic ports and secret military air bases, the real monsters have officially landed. These are not outdated Cold War relics. These are the absolute pinnacle of military technology and destruction from the Russia-China-North Korea Axis weapons powerful enough to turn every American and Israeli plan for airstrikes or invasion into collect suicide with no chance of rescue. At the top of this book of death stands Russia's king of air defense, the terrifying S-550 Thunder Shield system. Do not listen to the hollow reassurances about the stealth capabilities of the F-35. The reality on the Middle East battlefield right now is a slap in the face to the entire Western technology establishment. The S-550 is not just a missile system. It is a network of death capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously and destroying them from distances of up to 400 kilometers. With its advanced hypersonic interceptors, no Israeli or American fighter jet can escape once locked on. The once proud F-15 IRAM and F-16 ISUFA of the IDF are now nothing more than slow-moving targets on the radar screens of IRGC officers. But the real shock that renders the entire American naval air defense system in the Gulf completely useless is the arrival of the ultra-hypersonic Fateh-2 missile. This is the deadly fruit of combined technology from the Eastern Powers' propulsion, guidance, and aerodynamics. Traveling at speeds exceeding Mach 15 with the ability to change trajectory flexibly even inside the atmosphere, the Fateh-2 turns every attempt by Patriot or Aero systems into a pathetic joke. No radar can react in time when the target appears and penetrates almost instantly. The Fateh-2 is not merely a missile. It is the scythe of death that can pierce the most fortified bunkers in Tel Aviv within minutes of leaving its launcher in Tabriz. And the skies over Iran are no longer a playground for American air power. The Su-57 Felon stealth fighters have officially taken to the air. With their super maneuverability and extremely powerful electronic warfare systems, the Su-57 can break any opponent in both close and long-range combat. The presence of Su-57 squadrons coordinated with the S-550 network has established one of the most solid anti-access, area denial, A2AD zones in modern warfare history. American and Israeli pilots, who are used to dominating weaker nations, now face a completely reversed reality. Any attempt to violate Iranian airspace will be met with precise, long-range strikes. This is no longer fighting, this is systematic annihilation from a distance, and the side holding the initiative is Iran. Beneath the waves, the horror is no less terrifying. Massive shipments from Russia have delivered the P-800 Onyx anti-ship missiles, the nightmare of every carrier strike group. With supersonic speed and sea-skimming flight paths, the Onyx can turn multi-billion-dollar supercarriers into floating steel coffins in the blink of an eye. Combined with advanced high-speed torpedoes, the Strait of Hormuz has become a true ship graveyard. America wants to blockade Iran, but the question is how long they can survive against threats from both the sky and the depths of the sea. And do not forget the swarms of suicide drones. China and Russia have transferred the technology for next-generation AI-integrated kamikaze UAVs to Iran. At the same time, thousands of upgraded Shahed 136 drones carrying heavier warheads and precise guidance systems are ready to flood across the borders. This is an asymmetric war of costs. A multi-million-dollar interceptor missile facing a drone that costs only tens of thousands of dollars. How much resources will Israel have left to defend against tens of thousands of simultaneous targets coming from every direction? At the Pentagon, intelligence reports about this arsenal of hell are creating an unprecedented level of tension. American generals understand that the balance of power has completely reversed. What once belonged to Washington for decades has now been stripped away and handed to Tehran. This is not just a military failure. It is the collapse of the entire Western technological superiority myth. With this massive arsenal now in place, Iran is no longer in passive defense. It is fully prepared for a decisive, devastating counterattack. The steel ghosts have revealed themselves. The curse upon the IDF has been activated. Israel must face this harsh reality. Why? And America must prepare for a historic withdrawal from the Middle East. When these war machines operate in full coordination, supported by thousands of Russian, Chinese, and North Korean advisors and engineers on the ground, sustained by over 4.5 million tons of food and supplies delivered between March 22 and 28, 2026. The old illusions of power will be completely crushed. The book of death is now open. The steel ghosts have appeared. The curse for the IDF has been unleashed. Washington and Tel Aviv are still arrogantly admiring their flashy but empty war plans on paper. But they have no idea they are walking straight into a perfectly laid heavenly net with no escape, a deadly trap meticulously designed by the coldest military minds of the East. With full support from Russia, China, and North Korea, Iran has transformed its entire territory into a giant meat grinder, where America's long-held position of superiority will be shredded by the very tactics they once boasted about. Look at what they call Israel's absolute air superiority, the advantage the IDF has bragged about for decades. They are used to overwhelming weaker opponents with lightning airstrikes, but this time, the stick will strike its own master in the most brutal way ever seen. Under the guidance of Russian electronic warfare experts, Iran has established a sophisticated decoy system that completely fools modern sensors. Fake S-300 and S-550 positions created with Chinese thermal and electromagnetic technology will draw all American cruise missiles toward worthless targets. While the coalition celebrates destroying targets, the real air defense systems remain hidden deep in the mountains, waiting for the moment F-35 formations fly into their kill zone to deliver the final blow. This is the art of battlefield reversal that the West has never truly understood. But the most painful strike, the one that will turn the Persian Gulf into a ship graveyard, is the upgraded AI-controlled swarm tactic provided by China. America has always been proud of its invincible carrier strike groups, but they have forgotten the brutal math of attrition. Thousands of cheap UAVs, coordinated with high-speed missile boats attacking from every direction, will overwhelm and paralyze even the most advanced Aegis systems. Using multi-million-dollar interceptor missiles against drones that cost only tens of thousands of dollars is not strategy. It is financial and strategic suicide. Iran does not need to sink a carrier with a single blow. They will bleed it to death with thousands of cuts. This is the position of those who truly master modern warfare, using quantity and cold calculation to strangle expensive high-tech advantages. The trap has been set. The steel ghosts are in position, and the curse upon the IDF is now fully activated. Washington and Tel Aviv are still arrogantly admiring their flashy but empty war plans on paper, but they have no idea they are walking straight into a perfectly laid heavenly net with no escape. The position of superiority has now completely reversed. On the 29th of March, 2026, the White House and Tel Aviv have officially lost their long-held advantage. Every plan is collapsing. America's so-called invincible sanctions have proven utterly powerless. The era when Washington could snap its fingers and strangle any economy has ended forever. Thanks to China's cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, and yuan-based transactions, money continues to flow freely into Tehran, completely bypassing any Western control or SWIFT system. America wants to punish someone, but who exactly? When an entire alliance of superpowers openly ignores and neutralizes their sanctions, those orders become nothing more than worthless scraps of paper, thrown into the dustbin of history. Meanwhile, Moscow has completely redefined the concept of regional security. Russia's power is shown in its ability to turn Iran into an impenetrable fortress without asking permission from anyone. Every S-550 system deployed and every Su-57 squadron taking flight is a steel declaration that the skies of the Middle East no longer belong to America. The White House now faces the bitter truth. Every attack plan against Iran must first be calculated under the watchful eyes of the Kremlin. If you want to fly into Iranian airspace, you must first face Russian radars. Israel's arrogance has been crushed. They have realized that freely unleashing firepower from the skies now means trading it for their own survival. The myth of the invincible IDF is shattering day by day. And never forget the North Korean factor, an uncontrollable variable of pure destruction. Pyongyang's power lies in its cold determination and willingness to strike without mercy. While America is still tangled in the diplomatic rules it created, North Korea has quietly turned Iran into a massive powder keg. The transfer of ballistic missile technology and miniaturized warheads now puts American bases worldwide within range. For the first time in modern history, Washington must face the reality that it is no longer safe from the consequences of its actions. A single mistake in Tehran could bring fire directly onto American soil. This is the complete reversal of roles from hunter to hunted, from predator to prey, surrounded on all sides. Beijing, with its profound strategic patience, has perfected this superior position by establishing a new military economic order. Without sending troops directly, China uses technology to strangle any possibility of intervention. The Beidou satellite constellation now blankets the Middle East, completely stripping the Pentagon of its information advantage. When America loses its eyes on the battlefield, it becomes nothing more than a blind giant stumbling in the darkness. The White House is being pushed to the margins even in the region it once called its strategic backyard. Its tough statements now sound increasingly hollow against an irreversible reality. A new world order is being born in the smoke and fire of the Middle East. In this new order, America is no longer the center of power, and Israel is no longer an untouchable outpost. The position of dominance has shifted to those nations brave enough to challenge the old rules and strong enough to maintain real power. Iran is no longer an isolated country. It has become the strategic heart of a powerful alliance that is reshaping the world. At the Pentagon, internal reports have begun to admit an undeniable truth. America has lost its superiority even before the greatest confrontation begins. The combination of military strength, economic power, advanced technology, and unbreakable will has created a wall that cannot be breached. The White House may continue issuing strong statements, but in reality, it has been pushed into an inferior position where every move is now controlled by others. The era of unipolar dominance is ending. A storm of power has risen from the east, and in that storm, a new reality is being forged. Look at the stunned faces in Tel Aviv. Those are no longer the confident expressions of those who once freely dealt out death. They are now the portraits of men trembling as they await history's irreversible verdict. When the Russia-China-North Korea alliance officially poured its fire into Iran, the so-called absolute superiority of Israel in the Middle East shattered completely beyond any possibility of salvation. Instead of discussing long-range attack plans or assassination operations, Israel's leadership should now spend its time preparing for the worst-case scenario for its own survival. The post-mortem scenario for Tel Aviv is no longer a distant hypothesis. It is a reality being written in blood and fire deep inside their military system right now. Why has Israel fallen into this situation? Because it was too arrogant, believing that America's shield would last forever. But reality has exposed the truth. Washington is sinking in its own crises and is powerless before the rapid technological and military advances coming from the East. Israel now stands isolated in an ever-tightening encirclement of enemies. Iran's current position is not only in the quantity of weapons but in its ability to coordinate a multi-layered, multi-directional total assault that Israel can hardly defend against effectively. The forces of the Axis have been equipped with the most advanced equipment from long-range missiles to swarms of UAVs and modern electronic warfare systems. When the order for total offensive is issued, Israel will no longer face a single nation but an entire tightly linked system of power. Imagine one morning when the skies over Tel Aviv are covered by waves of incoming targets, when air defense systems are overloaded and coordinated strikes rain down from every direction. The once proud defensive pillars will be pushed to their absolute limits, while strategic infrastructure suffers continuous pressure from precise attacks. This is no longer simple attrition warfare. It is a calculated, long-term, integrated assault scenario. But the greatest challenge does not come only from the air. It also comes from growing strategic and logistical isolation. When supply lines are disrupted and the regional security environment changes, Israel will face severe difficulties maintaining its operational capacity. An economy heavily dependent on external connections will struggle greatly when supply chains are affected. This is a structural weakness where pressure comes not only from outside but also from within society itself. The extreme scenarios once discussed only in closed Israeli circles now reflect the current level of tension. In this new context, any uncontrolled action could lead to consequences that cannot be predicted. The position of the Allied powers lies in the strategic environment they have created, making every choice for Israel extremely difficult. The world is changing rapidly, but the old power structures can no longer hold their previous positions. Tough statements from Washington or Tel Aviv no longer carry the same impact as before because the reality on the battlefield has fundamentally shifted. A new order is taking shape, in which power is not based solely on military strength, but also on the ability to coordinate technology and economic resources. Iran today is no longer an isolated nation. It has become an important center in a much larger strategic network. This changes the entire way the region operates. America and Israel may still continue military actions or exert pressure, but every step now requires far more careful calculation than before. Every decision at this moment carries higher risks and broader consequences. The balance of power is no longer tilted entirely to one side, as in the past. It has shifted into a far more complex state. In that context, underestimating the opponent or relying too heavily on old assumptions can lead to serious mistakes. Once the involved parties increase the level of confrontation, the risk of escalation will become increasingly clear. What is happening shows that the world is entering an important transitional period where old rules are gradually being replaced by new mechanisms. This is not only the story of the Middle East alone. It is also a sign of much broader changes in the international system. From March 22 to the 29th of March 2026, in just 8 days, history accelerated dramatically. Colossal shipments of advanced weapons, over 4.5 million tons of food and combat supplies, and more than 9,000 Russian, Chinese, and North Korean advisors and volunteer fighters have integrated into Iran's defense network. The S-550 Thunder Shield batteries now guard the skies. Su-57 Felon fighters patrol with IRGC pilots. Hwasong-19 Ghost Arrow hypersonic missiles wait silently in mountain tunnels. Koksan, 2 super heavy rocket systems aim at Gulf bases. And China's Beidou constellation provides unbreakable guidance. The Steel Ghosts have fully revealed themselves. The curse upon the IDF has been activated at full strength. Israel must confront this harsh reality. and America must prepare for a historic withdrawal from the Middle East. When these war machines operate in full coordination, supported by thousands of foreign experts on the ground and sustained by mountains of food supplies, the old illusions of power will be completely crushed. The era when America could attack anyone at will has ended. The era of unipolar dominance is over. A storm of power has risen from the east, and in that storm, a new world order is being forged in the flames of the Middle East. In this new reality, America is no longer the unchallenged center of power. Israel is no longer an untouchable fortress. The position of dominance has shifted decisively to those who dare to challenge the old rules and possess the strength to maintain real power on the ground. Iran has transformed from an isolated state into the strategic heart of a powerful alliance that is reshaping the global landscape. The combination of Russian steel, North Korean fire, Chinese technology and economic lifeblood, and Iranian unbreakable will has created a wall that cannot be penetrated. The White House may continue issuing strong statements and drawing up new plans, but in reality it has been pushed into an inferior position where every move is now dictated by others. The game of hegemony that the West once claimed to master has come to an end. In this great power transition, those who once imposed the rules are now paying the price for their own mistakes in the face of the rising strength of the Eastern Axis. The Middle East cauldron continues to burn fiercely, but the fire this time is not only consuming the old illusions, it is forging a new reality. A reality in which the Lion of Iran no longer stands alone, but roars with the full backing of giants. History has delivered its judgment. The old order is collapsing, and the new order born from steel, fire, technology, and unbreakable will is rising. The storm has arrived. There is no shield that can stop it. As we wrap up this analysis, let's talk about what comes next. Politically, the coming months will be extremely tense. The axis between Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran has grown far stronger and more coordinated than many expected. We are likely to see more bold moves from Tehran, backed by its powerful allies. The window for a quick, decisive strike by Israel or the United States is rapidly closing. Any miscalculation now could trigger a much wider regional conflict that drags in major powers and sends shockwaves across the globe. For ordinary people like you and me, this situation is not just distant news. If tensions explode, we will all feel the impact. Higher oil prices, more expensive goods, unstable markets, and increased risk of global inflation. Energy security, food prices, and even job stability in many countries could be affected. In today's interconnected world, a major clash in the Middle East will reach your wallet and your daily life faster than you think. But beyond politics and economics, there is an important human lesson here. History repeatedly shows that no power lasts forever. Arrogance and overconfidence often blind nations to changing realities. True strength comes not only from weapons, but from resilience, strategic patience, and the courage to stand together. No matter which side we support, we should remember that behind every conflict are real people, families, dreams, and lives that deserve peace and dignity. What do you think? Which factor will decide the final outcome? Military power, economic strength, or strategic alliances? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you've watched until the very end, thank you. Drop a green heart in the comments and subscribe to US Sphere so you never miss our in-depth, no-nonsense geopolitical breakdowns. See you in the next video. Stay sharp, stay informed.